South Africa. This is going to shock you. Julius Malema just revealed something that nobody saw coming. He says he's not just a Venda man. He says he's Moshavi, a descendant of the black Jews from ancient Israel. And he's not joking. According to Malema, his spiritual identity goes far deeper than we ever imagined. He claims black people, yes, black South Africans, are part of a lost Jewish lineage that stretches from Israel to Zimbabwe to Limpopo. But is this a political stunt, a misunderstood cultural truth, or a powerful declaration of spiritual resistance? Let's break it down.
Perhaps let me start with Moshavi. I have a lot of Venda friends. One time they had me calling me Moshavi, and I was thinking, so they were like, at Moshavi, yes. How is Julius Moshavi? Yeah. Do you mind educating people?
Well, Moshavi is not Vendas. Moshavi is the black Jews who came from Israel, landed in Yemen, and then spread all over the world. They are found in Zimbabwe. They are found in Karangaland, in Zambia. They are found everywhere else. But because they come from Israel, everywhere else where they settle, they assume the language of those people. So because they came from the north, they ended up, majority of them, in South Africa, being in Venda. So because they are found in their majority in Venda, a lot of people assume they are Vendas, but that is not the case. Oh, yes.
So just tell us
where you find Moshavis in the babies, Matale, Urameti, Umalema. So Kasal Matale, the deputy minister of police, is a Moshavi as well, but he's a very speaking person.
So does that explain your close relationship?
Yes, we are relatives because as the black Jews, wherever we find each other, we embrace one another, support each other, defend each other, and share a lot of ideas together. So that's what brought us together.
Oh, family-wise, Moshavi, you once spoke, I think it was the last press briefing, if I'm not mistaken.
Now pause. Did you catch that? Malema isn't just talking about family nicknames here. He's laying claim to an ancient identity, a spiritual legacy that stretches back over 1,000 years. And it's not just about culture, it's about power, history, and the black African claim to divine heritage. Let's talk about who these black Jews are. They're known as the Lemba people, a mysterious, often overlooked group in southern Africa, living mainly in Zimbabwe, South Africa, and Mozambique. For centuries, they've insisted that they're descendants of Jewish tribes from the Middle East. People laughed until science proved them right. In the 1990s, genetic tests found that many Lemba men carry the Cohen modal haplotype, a specific Y chromosome marker linked to Jewish priests, the Kohanim. One of their clans, the Buba clan, had this marker in over 50% of its males. That figure is shockingly high, even among modern Jewish populations. Scientists and historians had to stop and say, this isn't myth anymore, it's real. And that's what Malema is pointing to when he calls himself Moshavi. He's not just making cultural claims, he's linking black South Africans to biblical tribes, to holy tradition, to spiritual authority. It's as if he's saying, we are not the forgotten, we are the chosen.
I'm a Christian at heart. I believe there is God above all of us, and it is that God that gives us guidance. But I talk to God through my ancestors. I practice African rituals. Every year, the Passover Eve, because God, to me, is like a king. You don't go to the king on your own. That is disrespectful in the African culture. You don't just go straight. So I go to God through my ancestors, and I believe that I have a duty to do that. So if you look at the articulation of the Jesus Christ and all of that, if their ancestor also, I have no problem with their ancestor. They must not have a problem with my ancestors.
All right. So now hold on. This isn't just religion. This is revolution. Malema says he's Christian, but not in the way the West defines it. He blends his faith with ancestral worship, African spirituality, and radical reinterpretations. He says ancestors are mediators to God, just like in ancient cultures, just like in the traditions of the Lemba, and in Malema's worldview. Even Jesus Christ is an ancestor. This is a bombshell, because it directly challenges how Christianity was imposed during colonization. It refuses to separate African identity from spiritual legitimacy prophecy, and it says proudly, "We don't need to abandon our ancestors to know God. This is the decolonization of the soul." And here's the part that stunned me the most in my research. Malema's Moshavi identity might sound new, but it connects to centuries of forgotten history. Let's dive in. The Lemba oral history says they came from a place called Senna, a real city in Yemen. They describe traveling by boat from the Middle East, down the coast of East Africa, and settling in southern Africa. And they didn't just blend in. They brought architecture, trade, and religious customs that made them distinct. Even the great Zimbabwe ruins, some say, were influenced by Lemba craftsmanship. Anthropologist Tudor Parfit, a white Jewish scholar, spent their claims. He found real towns in Yemen that matched Lemba stories. He found Jewish-style customs, no pork, ritual slaughter, circumcision on the 8th day, and finally, the DNA backed it all up. And now, decades later, Julius Malema, leader of the EFF, firebrand politician, enemy of colonial power, claims he's part of this ancient priestly people. Why? Because identity is power. Malema knows this. When he says he's Moshavi, he's not just speaking about lineage, he's declaring a right to spiritual sovereignty. He's saying black people are not just victims of history. We are history. We're not just Africans. We're Israelites. We're not just oppressed. We're ordained. It's emotional. It's radical. And it's calculated. Because for years, the struggle in South Africa has been about land, language, race, but not enough about spirit, about who we are at the deepest level. Colonizers told us we were savages. Missionaries told us our gods were demons. Apartheid told us we had no legacy worth respecting. And now, Malema is standing up and saying, "You're wrong. We are the chosen. We are the lost tribe. We are the ones who survived. And we remember who we are." But the question is, do you believe him? Is Malema uncovering a buried truth? Or is this a powerful narrative weapon in a fight against spiritual erasure? Some critics might say it's exaggerated. They'll argue that the Moshavi label isn't widely known in scholarly texts, that it sounds more like a localized or symbolic identity than an academic one. And they're right. The term Moshavi doesn't appear much in official Lemba research. It might be a regional or informal synonym or a reinterpretation rooted in personal experience. But does that make it invalid? Because if lived history and oral tradition count for nothing, then we're erasing the core of African identity. The West has written books, but we have memory, we have stories, we have bloodlines that stretch back farther than colonial records ever will. Malema's claim, "I am Moshavi," isn't just personal, it's political, it's spiritual, it's about rewriting the script. Instead of, "You are a poor African, born to suffer," he says, "You are a priestly people, born to rule." And let me tell you, whether you agree with Malema's politics or not, that message shakes the ground. It touches a part of our psyche that's been beaten down for too long, a part of us that wants to reclaim meaning, dignity, and power, not through violence, but through memory. So what now? Do we accept this idea that black South Africans might be connected to ancient Israel? Do we entertain the possibility that our ancestors, yes, yours too, might carry deeper spiritual roots than colonizers ever allowed us to believe? Or do we brush it off as myth, conspiracy, propaganda? South Africa, this is your moment to decide. Because when Malema speaks of ancestors, spiritual mediation, and the Jewish-African connection, he's opening the door to a completely new framework for identity and struggle. One where religion isn't whitewashed. One where African ritual and Christian faith are not enemies. One where we no longer ask for permission to exist. We declare it. And let's be clear, this narrative is dangerous to those who want to keep us confused, disconnected, and disempowered. Because if black people start seeing themselves as sacred, ancient, and chosen, the whole system of economic and cultural domination begins to crack. That's why this message matters. So what do you think? Is Malema right to say that black people are the real Jews? Is this identity a unifier or a political tool? Is he waking us up or rewriting the script too far? Let's hear your thoughts in the comments. And remember, this is Top Malema. We don't just talk, we dig deep, we challenge the surface, and we speak with fire.
And we're being accused of wanting all kinds of criminals to be on the streets, or that we don't believe that people should show up to their meetings and appointments. Last time I checked, there's a lot of people that are actually being grabbed as they are going in for their appointments. In fact, we know that one of the candidates that was recently running in this mayoral, he ended up being arrested because he decided that he was actually going to escort people that are actually showing up to their meetings. Or we know that the Pope, yes, the Pope himself, decided that the church may need to have people that are going to escort people as they're going into their meetings, because the reality is that what they are claiming what they want to do versus what they're actually doing, the actions don't match up. And while we are supposed to be talking about visas, somehow we continue to cherry pick and talk about one criminal act and another criminal act. And it is so very interesting to me that, yes, we will say people are xenophobic, because when you start to decide that just because somebody came from another country, they are automatically some kind of criminal, that does sound kind of xenophobic to me, because you are using a paintbrush to paint an entire group of people where the vast majority of them are coming here because they are actually seeking a better life. Let me get to what this hearing is supposed to be about. The idea that Trump and my Republican colleagues want to restore integrity and security in the visa process is actually a joke. Let me be clear. Integrity is not snatching lawful visa holders off the streets and throwing them into unmarked vans. Integrity is not revoking visas based on social media posts that hurt somebody's little feelings because kids decide that they want to go after Trump or this administration. We have a thing called free speech in this country. And since we're talking about integrity, I'm confused as to why my Republican colleagues aren't talking about the lack of integrity when it comes to the president's family's visas. Let me remind y'all that Melania, the first lady, a model, and when I say model, I'm not talking about Tyra Banks, Cindy Crawford, or Naomi Campbell level, applied for and was given an EB-1 visa. And what's that stands for is an Einstein visa. Now, y'all that don't know, let me tell you how you receive an Einstein visa. You're supposed to have some sort of significant achievement, like being awarded a Nobel Peace Prize or a Pulitzer, being an Olympic medalist, or having other sustained extraordinary abilities and success in sciences, arts, education, business, or athletics. Last time I checked, the First Lady had none of those accolades under her belt. It doesn't take an Einstein to see that the math ain't mathin' here. Nevertheless, what Republicans are doing with this reconciliation process, the travel bans and revoking visas, jeopardizes our national security. It threatens our communities, our higher education, and our economy. Visas like the largely vetted J visas for higher education and M visas for trade, training, attract the next innovators, medical providers, researchers, and educators that we need to build on American success. I'm not gonna mess up your name, so I'm not doing that. But I'm with you, okay? In your experience, do individuals on J or M visas typically improve or impair our economy?
They generally improve the economy, and I can give a brief example. My wife is a very successful woman. She makes a ton of money, which I'm grateful for. And the reason why we're able to do that while having 3 children is because of the au pair visa, somebody who is here on a J, who is here and able to supply this for us. But I also want to defend Melania real quick. Not everybody could marry Donald Trump, and I think that's quite an achievement. So I think she deserves credit for that. Nobody up here could have done it.
You sure right, I couldn't do it. But anyway, in fact, J visa holders contribute $43.8 billion to the U.S. economy and support more than 300,000 jobs. And make no mistake, immigrants improve the health of U.S. citizens too. Despite the fact we already have a doctor shortage, Trump's reckless travel ban and visa overhaul are exacerbating this crisis by impairing hundreds of hospitals with foreign-trained doctors set to do their residencies here in the United States, meaning fewer people will get the help they need and more people will die. Now, let me remind you that Republicans are trying to gut Medicaid. Roughly 4.5 million people receive caregiver services through Medicaid, and most of these folks are in red states. And wouldn't you know that in 2023, Kaiser Family Foundation estimated that almost 30% of long-term care providers or home caretakers were immigrants. It's like Republicans want Americans to suffer. Now, Republicans say visas make us less secure, but let's talk about how visas given to victims of crimes like rape, murder, human trafficking, torture, abduction, kidnapping, to help law enforcement with their investigation or prosecutions of these crimes. These folks are risking their own security for broader safety of Americans and our communities. Thank you so much. I will wait.
I'm grateful to the Supreme Court for stepping in and solving this very, very big and complex problem, and they've made it very simple. I want to thank Justice Barrett, who wrote the opinion brilliantly, as well as Chief Justice Roberts, and Justices Alito, Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, and Thomas. Great people. Thanks for this decision, and thanks to this decision, we can now promptly file to proceed with numerous policies that have been wrongly enjoined on a nationwide basis. And some of the cases we're talking about would be ending birthright citizenship, which now comes to the fore. That was meant for the babies of slaves. It wasn't meant for people trying to scam the system and come into the country on a vacation. This was, in fact, it was the same date, the exact same date, the end of the Civil War was meant for the babies of slaves, and it's so clean and so obvious. But this lets us go there and finally win that case, because hundreds of thousands of people are pouring into our country under birthright citizenship.